and FY26 budgets. This is taking us back to the BAA. The treasurer had sent us a memo last week. We didn't get a chance to talk about it. So before we finish the bill, I wanted to invite the treasurer in to go through a few of the items that he was requesting for the budget adjustment. So that's the introduction. Treasurer, welcome to Senate Appropriations.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me in, and thank you for accommodating me with remote participation as well. We're just finishing up a VHFA board meeting, so appreciate the flexibility. As the chair mentioned, we had sent over a memo on the BAA that had a couple of language requests, had two funding requests, and then also addressed the notwithstanding language that was in the BAA relative to the waterfall for the rainy day fund, the state employee pension, and then also what is referred to as the PAAA, or the pension reform legislation from 2022. So on that piece, just wanted to reiterate what the memo says, which is, that the teacher post-retirement adjustment allowance account, that's the PAAA. The waterfall is the only funding source for that item. That was an important part of the overall pension reform package that was achieved in 2022. And I think the simple way of addressing that issue now would be to remove that notwithstanding language in the BAA and have that conversation in the budget when both revenues are more precise and also what the monies that are being withheld would be used for would be more precise as well. So, that was one large point that we wanted to make in the memo. And I know we mentioned that when we were in last week on pensions, but wanted to underline it and reiterate it. I don't know, Chair, if there are any questions on that piece. I can go to the pieces that are more specific to our department.
No, I think that's good, unless there are questions. About Section 54 of the language, if you just want to remember. But I think we did have had some discussions about that. So unless there are any questions for the treasurer on that, we can move on to the other items.
So the two language items that we were requesting, one is relating to the Economic Empowerment Division title change. So we previously had established under Act 78 in 2023, the Office of Vermont Saves. Our desire was to expand the focus of that so that it's broader economic empowerment. I believe some of that was incorporated in the BAA, but particularly for a couple of places where it refers to the Vermont Saves Director rather than the Director of Economic Empowerment or the Economic Empowerment Division, wanted to clean that up. So I think there are two references to where it currently says VT Saves rather than Economic Empowerment Division. And the other language item was in connection with debt service language, Section 76. There was a friendly amendment that was included in the House version with a minor error, and the word "and" should have been included in the language we sent over. We underline and bold that word "and," so it should be underwriters' fees and amounts for reserves. Right now, it's just underwriter fees, amounts for reserves. So it's a minor language item that we're hoping to clean up.
We'll just make sure that's
page 33.
Yeah, page 43.
Oh, on you have the red line.
Yeah, this just still says underwriters' fees amounts. Okay, that's a good catch.
And then there are two financial requests other than the language request. The first is for the Emergency Personnel Survivors Benefit Trust Fund. So this is a trust fund that's administered by our office for individuals that die in the line of duty or connected to their employment for firefighters, volunteer firefighters, and EMS. We had a few $100,000 in that trust fund, and we had a long period of time where we did not receive a claim on the fund at all. I believe the last claim was in 2016. So from 2016 to the fall of 2024, we had no claims, but in the last few months, I believe we've had at least 4 claims, and there may be a 5th claim that's pending. So that would deplete, the claims that are pending would deplete the fund. And as a result, we're asking for a one-time infusion into that fund of $220,000 to help with the claims that are pending and those that I think are realistic to expect, which are hopefully none, just because of what this fund is used for. But in case there are additional claims, would cover those over the next year to 6 months before we could come back to the legislature.
Treasurer, does the interest that is earned stay in the account?
I believe it would go to the general interest income that comes into the general fund.
Is that the way we should do it?
You certainly could do it the other way and retain those.
Oh, it does stay. No. Okay. We're being corrected. Your staff in the room is telling us that the interest does stay in the fund.
Oh, okay, so then that is the way we should do it then.
Yeah. Well, because you mentioned what the interest was here, so I thought maybe that meant that we had language in the fund that carried forward the interest in the fund. Okay, so that's the $220,000 ask. And this does nothing in relation to the request or the bill that we had to add other personnel to the fund, the police or DPW folks.
Yeah, that's right. There was a change in the bill last year to move the total cap of what somebody can receive from $50,000 to $80,000. That was adjusted upward because since the inception of the fund, that upper amount had never been adjusted for inflation. But it did not expand coverage to include other types of professions. There's ongoing conversation about that, but this is really focused on sort of providing the funds for the current occupations that are included in the trust fund.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions about that? People feel good about including that 220 in, because I've already asked you about it.
No discussion.
Okay, go ahead, Treasurer.
So the last item is relating to a study, a feasibility report that we completed in collaboration with the Agency of Natural Resources regarding the Climate Superfund. So since the Superfund was passed, we issued an RFI requesting information from experts and academics about how they would approach the items identified in the legislation, both for ANR's work and for the Office of the Treasurer's work, which is the cost assessment, obtaining the cost of climate change prospectively and retrospectively. In getting that information back, there certainly was a clear statement from the academics and experts that they could model the kind of flooding that Vermont experiences, which is mountain-based, river valley sort of based flooding rather than ocean rise flooding, but that they had not sort of done that modeling to date. So for us, more broadly, it sort of signaled that the timeline for our work, which is due January of 2026, probably needs some flexibility so that we have a little bit more time if needed because this is a newer area of analysis. But it also spoke to the need to have more funding. We have $300,000, which was sort of an initial request at the end of last session. But given what we expect to be the additional work that needs to occur for that analysis to, take place, we, in the report, asked for a one-time appropriation of an additional $700,000 plus a limited service position to help with that work internal to the treasurer's office. There's an interest in getting an RFP out. So we did an RFI, request for information. There's an interest in getting an RFP out, a request for proposal, so that work can continue. We wanted to make this ask in the BAA of some portion of that 700,000 and the full-time or the limited service position, because that would assist us in sort of having confidence that the RFP could be issued and could be executed on as well. So the full ask is 700,000, but we thought getting some money in the BAA would support the work getting underway sooner than potentially waiting toward the end of the budget year and the end of the legislative session. So wanted to make that request and happy to answer any questions on that as well.
So the request is for 350 and the FTE, or just the permission for the FTE, but the money for the FTE is in the 350 that you're requesting. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think the full ask is 700,000 and limited service position FTE. So that would be about 125,000. So those are two separate sort of asks. In the BAA, we were asking for 350,000 and the full-time base funding for the limited service position to help basically start with the coordination of the RFP and the work that will have to begin in coordinating those experts in that process. So the request in the BAA was for both of those items.
Do you have a dollar amount for the FTE?
Yeah, the estimate is 125,000.
But that's 125 in addition to the 700.
Exactly right.
Okay, yeah, Senator Watson.
So the 125,000 is sounds like a full year position, or just thinking about the BA covering a position for the next 3 months, and then including in the remainder in the FY26 budget. I mean, I'm wondering about covering a whole position versus the part.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Senator. I mean, if we were to think about how long would this position be in place for, it's probably for some portion of fiscal year 2025 and then all of fiscal year 2026, and maybe that's the extent of it. So splitting it up into 2 fiscal years, I think would make some sense.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything else you want to tell us, Treasurer Pichek? We don't have any other questions, it seems.
No, just again, thank you for agreeing to hear us out on these items. Some of them were, items we wanted to mention that we wanted to fix from the BAA in the House. Some of them were not mentioned in the House at all. So appreciate that it has passed the House and that you're still entertaining the request. So thank you. The timing of that sort of worked out as such, but appreciate it nonetheless.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us on short notice. Thank you, actually, for coming over, correcting us on the interest.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck with your work.
All right, thanks. So with that, we can move on to the JFO running through. I think we're going to have Emily.
I think it might make sense to have Grady go first, because in case you have changes to the language, it might take.
Yeah, but Grady's not here.
Grady's not here. It might be good to take a quick break then.
Okay.
Grady gets here.
Okay, we can do that.
And maybe give him. He'll be ready at 2:30.
Okay, unless he's coming in right now.
Which is entirely possible.
That's not great.